have some very strong beliefs about the way things are and the ways that I think they might be better. And I bet you do too. And I bet our neighbors around us would say the same thing. Some of those neighbors may have one set of ways they think things could be better, and another might have a different set. But I'd be willing to bet that most folks have opinions about something they think could be better than the way it is now. Do you kind of agree with this? Seems reasonable? Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of folks think, like, if only more folks could just see the world the way I see it, we'd all be better off, right? Now that said, despite some differences regarding the right way to get there, I bet we actually agree on quite a few things about the way things should be. For example, I'm going to ask for a show of hands, who in this room generally agrees with the following statement? Our lives are full of interwoven, overlapping communities, and our individual and collective happiness depends on them. Does that seem like something you get behind? Yeah, right? Not too controversial. But just about unanimous. So I pulled that line from a document called Project 2025, which is a plan that has been forwarded by a conservative group in our country with the belief that the ideas contained within that document are the roadmap forward to a better tomorrow. Now, I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but rather I'm going to say that I bet there are some opinions in this room, one way or another, about that plan and what it proposes. Some of you may have never heard of this plan. Some may have very passionate opinions about this plan. Some may think it's wrong-headed. Some may think it has a few ideas that have merit worth exploring. And some may think it's the completely right way forward. But I can tell you one thing. I sincerely doubt that anyone that has actually read and found something they agree with in that document is going to feel comfortable asking someone for their thoughts on it here. And I think that's a little bit of a problem, and I'll tell you why. I was having a conversation with a member recently, and they told me that they were struggling with deciding what to do at this next election. But it had nothing to do with either of the candidates that they had to choose from. It had actually to do with a lack of trust in the whole system and the outsized influence that money seems to now have on both political parties. Now, as I spoke with them, they noted how much they love this church community, but how uncomfortable they felt asking folks for help sorting through some of the issues that they were struggling with regarding this upcoming election. Because they believe that this faith tradition and this community leaned so far to one side that they weren't sure that their inquiries would be welcomed here if they said that they were in the middle, or even if they leaned a little bit conservative on some issues, and not all the way over on the other side of the seesaw. And I think that's actually a problem. And I think it's a problem because a lot of folks only read one or two lines about our faith tradition, and they say, yeah, that sounds good. I can get behind that more than I can buy into the faith that I was raised in. I'll just start coming to this church. The people are nice, the coffee and treats are usually pretty good, right? Seems decent. And I think that would be the same thing as reading that one line of that Project 2025 document and saying, yeah, that sounds pretty good. I guess I'll just go along with whoever's proposing that. Despite what some people may think, this is not a believe whatever you want kind of faith. There is no power in that. There is no agency in that. And frankly, there is no point in that. You can believe whatever you want to believe from the comfort of your own home. You do not have to get up on a Sunday morning to have that. There is no ministry in that. But we're not a creedal faith, right? This isn't a faith that's going to tell me what to believe, so that belief means I get to believe whatever I want, right? Yeah, well, not exactly. Not exactly. I hear many people in this community say, I don't want to talk about politics here. That's not what I come to church for. Even though the language of our beloved principles, a bedrock of the faith they claim to follow, carried forward in one of the new values that we're being asked to commit to as a faith community states, we support the use of inclusive,
democratic processes to make decisions within our congregations, our associations, and our association and society at large. How can we have any right to claim that we value democracy if we are unwilling to learn how to engage in the very thing that a healthy democracy requires? Especially in a place where we think we generally agree with most of the people we're choosing to hang out with. It doesn't make any sense, right? I feel like my job as your minister in this moment in history is to teach you or to remind you of how to draw strength and guidance from this weird, hard to define religion that we call Unitarian Universalism. Because these are unsettling times. Times that are calling upon us all to plot a new path forward, because we know that the place we are in is clearly no longer sustainable. Just like that dragonfly larva in today's story, I can't know what the unknown future will hold. None of us can. But I can feel the water level getting lower in the pond. And like many of you, I do my best to cast my gaze upward and imagine that maybe, just maybe, the possibility of a miraculous new tomorrow does actually exist. If only we can summon the courage to make the climb that it would take to get there. If not us, who? And if not now, when? Imagining a future that is radically different than the comfortable lives we now inhabit is scary. And it's even scarier when the winds of change are already buffeting our pond so savagely that all we really want to do is burrow ourselves in the mud and hope that the storms will just blow over. So the question becomes, which path are we going to choose? I'm here to tell you, our faith is calling upon us to have the courage to get out of the mud that we have become stuck in, to climb up to the lily pad, and to become dragonflies in this world. Our faith offers everything we need to make this journey towards a new, unimagined world. But to do so demands that we commit to learning about this faith and embedding it into our being, and then putting our faith into action, the same way the early followers of Jesus did. This is far more than a believe whatever you want faith. It has the power to bolster you, and it has the potential to lead towards our collective salvation, if only we are willing to actually practice it. Early Christians, historians are now telling us, did not actually worship a man that was crucified for their sins. The historical figure of Jesus was crucified, but the early Christians didn't focus on that. They were actually just trying to follow a man that had a vision and suggested a roadmap to help them overcome the crushing weight of empire by gathering together and working to try to create heaven right here on earth, in this plane. Our faith tradition draws from this story and from all the ancient wisdom traditions, and adds in all that we've collectively learned along the way to help us try to create a roadmap that will helpfully guide us towards the creation of this imagined brighter future. We just have to believe in this possibility, and we need to be willing to do the work. Our Soul Matters theme this month is invitation. To that end, I am inviting you to reopen yourselves to new ideas and new ways of being. To reopen yourselves to possibility. I'm inviting you to remain curious. And most of all, I'm inviting you to create a space to welcome differing opinions that might actually clash with your most cherished beliefs, so that you are forced to challenge them in yourself and strengthen them and make sure that you are fully seeing the whole picture. Because we are honestly living in times of enormous potential, but we're also living in times filled with mud and drying up waterways. And it is going to take all of us pulling together to ensure the story of humanity unfolds towards the brighter tomorrow that I know we all hope to see. Unitarian Universalism offers us a path to follow towards that better way, if only we are willing to put our faith into its message and integrate its teachings into our lives. Now, let's be honest. Let's truly be honest. I know I can often sound like a dreamer up here. But at the end of the day, I am actually a very, very grounded realist. I spend a lot of time reviewing history so that I can understand how we got to where we are. My faith tells me to look at history for the lessons it offers to help guide our way today. I know how we got where we are today, to a place where no one wants to talk about politics, even though we're supposed to believe in this thing called democracy. And I'm going to share a little bit about that history to see if it can offer us any clues about where to go from here. For most of the last century, any outlet reporting the news was required to research facts and to try to report both sides of the story as well as they could. Most of us, as children, remember this wisdom that was shared by Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes in 1917. You may not know that's where it came from, but you'll remember it when you hear it. Who said in a ruling that freedom of speech afforded us in the First Amendment of our Constitution has limits. Like it's not okay to yell fire in a crowded theater when there's no fire because of the potential harm spreading this false information could create. Remember that? You learned that growing up? This concept was actually narrowed in the 1969 case Brandenburg versus Ohio, when the court said that speech could only be prosecuted when it posed a danger of imminent lawless action. So they sort of narrowed that down. And our news outlets used to ensure that this concept was adhered to by following what was known as the fairness doctrine, which again demanded that they present facts and also to share both sides of the story. Now, I'm sure there are many women, Black, Indigenous, and LGBTQIA folks that would rightly point out that the news has never truly been unbiased. But journalistic guidelines and laws at least strove to make the news as unbiased as it could be, and it kept the door open for new perspectives to challenge that status quo. All of that changed in 1985 under the Reagan administration, when the FCC issued a report stating that the doctrine hurt public interest and violated free speech rights guaranteed by the First Amendment. Now, there are many reasonable arguments for and against the fairness doctrine. And in this age of a distributed media, it is unlikely to ever return, although there is a bill that's been in Congress for many, many years, just sitting waiting to be taken up again. But while the laws have changed, the way we are presented with information has changed, and not everyone in the society has gotten that memo. False information can now easily and is frequently presented as truth. And these false truths can be curated in such a way that they are reinforced and spread like wildfire. It is so easy for many of us these days to see a story that's something that disputes something that we believe to be true, and to do a quick check, and to realize that our suspicions are confirmed. We find the source and we pat ourselves on the back for being so smart that we can sniff out that's fake news. How often do you fact check the news that you see that confirms your beliefs? I will be the first to admit that I am not always as diligent about that half of the equation. And that, my friends, is why we need to be open to listening to dissenting opinions in this space. Because we can honestly no longer trust that all of the content that we are being fed, and the only way to ensure that we are truly making decisions about the best choices we can make for ourselves and for our children is to remain in conversation with others who sometimes might disagree with us. Which is something our new value statement challenges us to do. Our fourth principle used to simply invite us on our own into a responsible search for truth and meaning. This concept is updated in our newly adopted value of pluralism, expanding our covenant to say that we will learn from each other in our free and responsible search for truth and meaning. It goes on to say that we embrace our differences and commonalities with love, curiosity, and respect. A member of this community challenged me to expand the circle and to make sure there was room for their more conservative perspective. When I originally heard the phrase widen the circle, I thought it was a prompt only to create an opening for the voices of the powerless to be included in the conversation. So I thought widening the circle was only to make sure that the powerless had room and were invited into the conversation. And while that is still vital intention for us to continue to strive towards, I turned to my ever-evolving faith tradition for guidance when faced with a challenge to my beliefs and found yet another gap in my awareness. This new value statement has helped me once again expand my vision as I continue to calibrate my personal compass towards an ever deeper search for truth and meaning. So again, with a simple willingness to continually take an honest and truthful look at history, I can see how the systems I live in evolved to put me in the peril I feel like we face today. And honestly, I can't see how that system is ever just going to be changed. But I do sense that we are headed towards trouble if we're not willing to continue to adapt to the changes that are happening in the systems around us. And I believe that the only place that change can happen is right here, and right here, and right here and back there with how we teach our kids, and then out there with how we interact with our neighbors. My faith challenges me to embrace the value of transformation. It says that we adapt to a changing world. It asks me to covenant, to promise, to collectively transform and grow spiritually and ethically. It says that openness to change is fundamental to our Unitarian and Universalist heritages, never complete and never perfect. In this coming year, I'm going to challenge this church to consider changing a lot. Are you willing to join me in this collective promise to work to grow both spiritually and ethically? Okay. To do that, we are going to have to get a whole lot better at this new value of pluralism, learning how to lean into our differences rather than turn away from them. You know what? Our religious exploration curriculum is going to have the youngest members among us exploring that concept all next month. And I hope you will join me and them in promising to learn how to embrace our differences with love and curiosity and respect rather than disdain and avoidance. Our values, like our principles, are all intertwined. One section of our newly articulated value of interdependence challenges us to work to repair harm and damaged relationships. My goodness, there is a lot of that work to be done in this country. And our politicians, no matter who we support, cannot save us. Only we can save ourselves. But if we only keep trying to save ourselves individually, we will fail. Because when everyone is trying to save themselves alone, everyone else around them can begin to feel like a hindrance to that outcome. Our faith at this moment in history is challenging us once again to remember that there is no us and them. There is only we. May we draw the strength we need, both from this faith and from each other, to make this transformation in our hearts before it's too late. Blessed be, and may it be so.